"Give me that camera." Adrian Vale's hand shot toward the cracked black camera clutched against 11-year-old Eli Bennett's chest. On its fractured screen, a blurred reflection showed Adrian peeling a paper label from the back of a $50 million photograph. A strip of blue conservation tape stuck to his cuff. Marcus Reed dropped to one knee beside the boy, steadied his trembling shoulder, and removed the memory card. "You called it worthless," Marcus said. "Why are you afraid of what it saw?" 3 hours earlier, fluorescent lights had hummed over Harbolite Community Arts Center's youth gallery, while volunteers arranged polished cameras beneath white display lamps. The air smelled of fresh paint, glass cleaner, and the burnt coffee cooling beside Marcus's repair station. He wore a charcoal work shirt beneath a brown canvas apron, with a brass screwdriver tucked into one pocket and his wedding ring hanging from a cord against his chest. While wealthy donors moved between framed photographs, Marcus tightened loose lens mounts and replaced worn battery covers for a fraction of what Harbolite charged visitors. His 10-year-old daughter, Maya, sat behind the table drawing tiny picture frames in a spiral notebook. Across the gallery, Eli stood at the end of the equipment line with both hands buried in the sleeves of his blue sweater. Each loaner camera had already been claimed. A volunteer glanced at his scholarship badge and told him to observe someone else. Eli nodded as though he had expected nothing better. He moved toward the wall, careful not to meet anyone's eyes. Maya watched him stop beneath an empty display hook bearing his name. "Dad," she whispered, tugging Marcus's apron. He didn't get one. Marcus looked at the overdue electric notice folded beneath his toolbox, then at the locked lower drawer he had not opened during a public event in 4 years. Inside rested Danielle's old camera, its screen split diagonally and its faded strap repaired with red thread by her own hand before the cancer took her. It was not valuable to anyone else. To Marcus, it was the last object that still felt warm when he touched it. He unlocked the drawer. Annie stared when Marcus placed the camera in front of him. "It's broken," the boy said softly. "The screen is," Marcus replied. "The lens still knows what to do." He cleaned the viewfinder, shortened the red-stitched strap, and settled it carefully over Eli's shoulder. Adrian Vale was speaking nearby about giving overlooked children the courage to see themselves. Cameras clicked as he smiled beside Serena Cole, Harbolite's chief judge, and Malcolm Voss, the collector preparing to insure Adrian's celebrated photograph for $50 million. Eli raised the old camera but lowered it again when 2 older students laughed at the cracked screen. Marcus adjusted the focus ring and stepped back. "Take one picture," he said. "Not for them. For yourself." Eli looked through the viewfinder. Across the room, a service door beside the featured artwork had opened a few inches. Adrian slipped behind the frame while Serena redirected a group of donors toward the opposite wall. Eli followed the movement instinctively and pressed the shutter. The sound was small, almost lost beneath applause from Adrian's speech. Then Adrian turned, saw the image glowing through the broken screen, and crossed the gallery with startling speed. Serena arrived a breath later, her smile calm and practiced. "Let's not make this unpleasant," she said. "That equipment was never approved." Malcolm signaled to a security guard near the conservation room doors. Eli's fingers tightened around the camera. "I only took one," he whispered. Marcus placed himself between the boy and Adrian without raising his voice. He slid the card into a clear protective case and tucked it inside his apron. Adrian's polished expression held, but his eyes followed the card. "That reflection doesn't prove anything," he said. For 1 second, even Serena stopped smiling. No one had mentioned a reflection. Marcus said nothing. He looked down at the frozen image on the cracked screen, then slowly lifted his eyes to the narrow strip of blue conservation tape clinging to Adrian Vale's cuff. Marcus kept his eyes on the strip of blue conservation tape clinging to Adrian Vale's cuff. "What reflection?" Serena Cole asked. "You heard." "Me," Adrian replied. "This has gone far enough." The fluorescent lights hummed above them, pale and steady, while the cracked camera rested against Eli's chest like something too fragile to defend itself. Marcus could feel the clear memory card case through his canvas apron, its hard edge pressing against his ribs beside the wedding ring hanging on its cord. Then Serena's professional smile returned. "We'll conduct a technical review." She turned toward the families gathered near the youth display and lifted one hand, not quite asking for silence but receiving it anyway. "There appears to be a question regarding unregistered equipment and image integrity. Harbolite takes the protection of young artists very seriously. No one mentioned Adrian reaching for the camera. No one mentioned the fear in Eli's face. The words Serena chose were clean enough to make the truth look messy. "I didn't change anything," Eli said. "No one said you did," Serena answered. "Then why are you taking down my picture?" The boy's voice caught on the final word. Serena looked past him toward Marcus, as though the question had come from an adult hiding behind a child. The gallery smelled of lemon cleaner and warm electrical cords. Somewhere near the entrance, a donor's bracelet tapped softly against a champagne glass. Serena crossed to Eli's photograph, unhooked it from the wall, and carried it to the review table with both hands, displaying the careful posture of someone handling evidence rather than a child's work. A staff member brought her a red adhesive label. She pressed it across Eli's entry form. "Entry suspended. Image integrity review." Eli stared at the words, his shoulders folded inward beneath the camera strap Marcus had just adjusted for him. "We don't need a crowd around this," Marcus said. "Agreed," Serena replied. "Take the boy outside. He has a name." For half a second, Malcolm Voss glanced away from the donors and studied Marcus more closely. Not because he believed him, but because Marcus had not raised his voice, pleaded for favor, or reacted like the desperate repairman Adrian had already begun describing. Adrian stepped toward a cluster of parents, his expression softened by practiced concern. "Young people are especially vulnerable to adults who want attention," he said. "Sometimes a child's excitement can be used without the child understanding what is happening." A few heads turned toward Marcus's worn apron. One woman looked at the scuffed toes of his work boots, then at the polished cameras along the display table. Another whispered that Harbolite should never have allowed outside contractors near the students. Marcus heard every word. He did not answer them. Serena placed Eli's photograph face down, but the edge slid over the table and struck the floor. One corner landed beneath the heel of a guest who stepped backward without noticing. Marcus bent, lifted the frame, and wiped the dusty shoe mark from the mica with the clean corner of his lens cloth. He checked that the glass had not cracked before handing it to Eli. "Hold it by both sides," he said quietly. "You didn't do anything wrong by taking a picture." Maya came from behind the repair station and stood beside Eli. She did not challenge Serena or stare at Adrian. She simply slipped her small hand around two of Eli's fingers, because his other hand was still gripping the broken camera. Serena watched the gesture, then looked toward the security staff. "Mr. Reed, your repair access is suspended pending review. Harbolite equipment must remain on the premises." "The camera is mine," Marcus said. "The data was created inside our facility. That does not make the boy your property." The air changed. Malcolm's eyes moved from Serena to the families listening nearby. Adrian's jaw tightened, but his voice remained smooth. "No one is discussing ownership of a child. We are discussing responsible stewardship." Marcus looked at him for a long moment. "Then start by letting him speak." Serena interrupted before Eli could try. She asked an assistant for Marcus's vendor file and signed the temporary suspension of his repair contract against the glass display case. The paper made a dry, scraping sound beneath her pen. Marcus noticed she did not read the required notice period printed above her signature. She had already decided the outcome. While she spoke about transparency and fairness, Marcus glanced at the tablet used to register youth entries. Eli's red suspension notice showed a creation time of 3:09 p.m. The photograph had been taken at 3:14. He checked the clock mounted above the gallery doors. Then he looked again. 5 minutes before Eli pressed the shutter, someone had already prepared the record that would accuse him. "We should go," Marcus told the children.
Eli Svalloved.
"Did I make you lose your job?" No. Marcus placed the framed photograph inside a stiff cardboard sleeve. Adults make their own choices. As they walked toward the exit, Adrian resumed speaking to donors about protecting the integrity of black art. Malcolm reassured a reporter that the $50 million presentation would continue without delay. Behind them, Serena ordered a staff member to collect every photograph that showed the backs of the featured frames. "Check the guests' cameras too," she said softly. "Anything from the conservation side gets deleted." Marcus stopped with one hand on the glass door. The suspension form had been created before Eli took the picture, and now Harbolite was erasing images no one had yet accused of being improper. How could they have known exactly what needed to disappear? Marcus did not turn back toward the gallery. He kept one hand lightly between Eli's shoulder blades as the boy walked through the glass doors, while Maya stayed close enough that her sleeve brushed his. Behind them, Harbolite's security staff began asking guests to open their cameras and phones. The doors closed on Serena's calm instructions, Adrian's polished voice, and the soft electronic chime of images being deleted. Outside, Baltimore traffic moved beneath a gray afternoon sky, as if nothing inside the building had changed. Eli stared at the cardboard sleeve holding his photograph. "They knew before I took it," he said. Marcus looked at the boy but did not answer until they reached his aging pickup. "They prepared something before you gave them a reason," he said. "That's not the same as knowing why." Eli's face tightened. "Did I make you lose your contract?" "No. But they fired you because of the camera. They suspended me because of their choices." Marcus opened the passenger door and waited while Eli climbed in beside Maya. He did not tell the boy the Harbolite contract paid nearly half the shop's monthly expenses. He did not mention the rent notice folded inside his toolbox or the brake repair he had postponed twice. Those were adult burdens, and Marcus would not place them inside an 11-year-old's chest just because other adults had already put too much there. His repair shop occupied a narrow brick storefront between a pawn shop and a laundromat. The painted letters on the front window had faded around the edges, and the bell above the door gave a tired metallic rattle when they entered. The room smelled of lens cleaner, solder, old leather cases, and the cinnamon gum Maya kept in the drawer beneath the register. A fluorescent tube flickered twice before settling into a weak white glow. Marcus locked the door behind them and turned the sign to closed, though they still had 3 hours left in the workday. Eli stood near the counter with Danielle's camera hanging from his neck. "I should give it back," he said. "Why?" "Because it causes trouble." Marcus set his toolbox down. "People cause trouble. The screen is broken. That was true before you touched it." Eli slowly lifted the strap over his head and placed the camera on the counter anyway. His fingers remained on the red stitching for a moment. "I don't want to take pictures anymore." Maya looked up from the stool where she was removing her backpack. "You only took one." Eli shrugged without looking at her. "One was enough." Marcus heard the silence beneath the words. It was not the silence of a child losing interest. It was the silence of someone learning that being noticed could be dangerous. He crossed to the old refrigerator in the back room, poured milk into 2 chipped mugs, and warmed them in the microwave. He gave the fuller mug to Eli, the one with the blue handle to Maya, then placed a sleeve of crackers between them. He took none for himself. "Homework first," he told Maya. She made a face but opened her math folder. Eli held the mug with both hands, letting the heat reach his fingers. Marcus returned to the counter and examined the camera. Dust had worked into the seam around the shutter button. The battery door sat slightly crooked, and a thin strip of black tape had begun peeling away from its edge. He opened the lower drawer beneath his workbench. Inside lay Danielle's repair kit exactly as he had left it 4 years earlier. Silver tweezers, a rubber air blower, 3 precision screwdrivers, and a folded lens cloth printed with tiny yellow flowers. He had used his own tools every day since her funeral. He had not touched hers once. Maya noticed him holding the flowered cloth. She did not say her mother's name. She simply watched, pencil resting against her lower lip. Marcus removed the battery and eased the old tape away from the compartment. Beneath it, written in Danielle's narrow handwriting with faded white ink, were 2 words: "Keep looking." His thumb stopped over the message. For one breath, The shop became painfully quiet. He remembered Danielle at this same bench, one elbow beside a jar of screws, laughing because Marcus always gave up on photographs too soon when the light was bad. He remembered her repairing the strap with red thread because she said black thread would make the camera look ashamed of surviving. Marcus pressed the tape back carefully, not hiding the words completely. "Was that your wife's?" Eli asked. Marcus nodded. "She fixed things too? Better than I did." He did not explain the hospital rooms, the unopened camera bag after the funeral, or the years he had spent repairing other people's memories while refusing to make any new ones of his own. Instead, he cleaned the sensor, tightened the lens mount, and worked a drop of solution around the stiff shutter button. The mechanism clicked cleanly beneath his finger. His phone vibrated beside the register. 3 Harbolite repair appointments had been canceled. A 4th message confirmed suspension of his vendor access. Then an automated email appeared with the subject line data preservation request. Marcus opened it while turning a tiny screw into place. Harbolite demanded all images, derivative files, backups, memory devices, and equipment used anywhere on its property. The language was formal, almost courteous. It gave him until noon the next day to surrender everything. At the bottom, a sentence warned that refusal could be interpreted as destruction or concealment of institutional property. Adrian and Serena had called the camera trash in front of a room full of people. Now their institution was claiming an interest in everything inside it. Marcus set the phone face down. He reattached the battery cover and wiped the cracked screen with Danielle's flowered cloth until Eli's single photograph became visible again beneath the fracture lines. "Here," Marcus said, holding out the camera. Eli did not take it. "What if they're right about me?" "About what?" "That I shouldn't have been there." Marcus turned the camera so the boy could see his own faint reflection in the dark glass. "A room can remove your picture from a wall. It cannot decide whether you were allowed to see." Eli finally reached for it. Marcus adjusted the red stitch strap over his shoulder once more, then placed the cardboard sleeve containing Eli's rejected photograph safely on the highest shelf, away from dust and careless hands. He did not promise the boy justice. He did not say the famous people would apologize. He only promised that no one would erase the image before they understood what it contained. Then Marcus locked the front door, switched off the store's public Wi-Fi, removed the memory card from its clear case, and placed it beside Danielle's handwritten words under the work lamp. What he had done for Eli looked like nothing more than fixing an old camera and protecting a frightened child, but as the damaged card reader gave one faint electronic pulse, Marcus realized the kindness that had cost him his contract might also be the only reason the truth still existed. The damaged card reader pulsed again, then the screen filled with a warning Marcus had hoped not to see. Recovery source modified after capture. Eli went still beside the workbench. "Did I break it?" "No." "Then why does it say modified?" Marcus did not answer until he had disconnected the shop from every network and checked the card reader's write protection switch with the tip of his brass screwdriver. The fluorescent tube above him buzzed unevenly, throwing thin shadows across Danielle's flowered lens cloth, the cracked camera, and the clear case that had protected the memory card since they left Harbolite. Maya sat at the side table with her math book open, watching her father's hands rather than the screen. Marcus knew how the warning would sound to anyone outside the room. He had removed the card. He had refused to surrender it. He had brought it into his private shop after losing a contract. If Harbolite claimed the file had been altered, his decision to protect Eli could be rewritten as an attempt to manufacture evidence. He opened the recovery software's activity log and read each line twice. The card itself had not been rewritten in the shop. The warning came from an attempted connection recorded while the camera was still inside Harbolite. At 3:16 p.m., less than 2 minutes after Eli pressed the shutter, an unidentified device had requested wireless access to the camera's image folder. The request had failed before completing. "Was the camera connected to anything there?" Marcus asked. Eli shook his head quickly. "I don't know how." "That's okay. Think about what you saw, not what you think it means." Eli stared at the red stitching along the strap. "A little symbol came on after I took the picture." "What kind?" "Like curved lines. Then it went away." Maya lifted her pencil. Like the Wi-Fi sign at school?
Ellie nodded.
It was the kind of detail a child might remember because it appeared briefly on a broken screen, not because he understood what it meant. Marcus wrote it beneath the access time but did not call it proof. Cameras often searched automatically for known networks. A failed connection could be ordinary. Could also mean someone near the youth station had tried to reach the card before Adrian crossed the room. Marcus created 2 read-only copies of the raw file, recorded the camera's serial number, and generated a hash for each copy. He wrote every step in a bound repair ledger, including the time he had opened the clear case and the name of the software used. Then he called North Harbor Digital Forensics, a small independent lab across the city. The technician who answered listened without interrupting. "You're the owner of the camera?" she asked. "Yes." "You removed the card from the venue?" "Yes." "And you have a financial dispute with the organization challenging the image?" Marcus looked at the canceled Harbolite appointments on his phone. "They suspended my contract after the photograph was taken." "Then you understand why your word isn't enough." "It shouldn't be." That answer bought him no trust, but it changed the silence on the line. The technician agreed to perform an integrity review if Marcus delivered the original card sealed, along with his handling notes and both copies. The fee would be $380. Marcus looked through the front window at his pickup, its front tire worn pale along one edge. The money in the register envelope had been set aside to replace both front tires before the next rain. "Can you start tonight?" he asked. After the call, he sealed the original card in a fresh evidence sleeve and signed across the adhesive edge. He did not tell Eli what the examination would cost. Instead, he opened the raw copy and lowered the room lights so the fractured reflection would stand out against the monitor. Adrian's figure appeared in the glass covering the $50 million photograph. His hand was behind the frame. The blue tape clung to his cuff. A pale rectangle bent beneath his fingers, but most of the writing disappeared behind a crack of reflected light. Marcus adjusted exposure without altering the original file, using a temporary viewing layer that could be removed. 2 words became partially visible. Naomi B. Eli's breathing changed. He pulled the old cloth bag beneath his sweater and pressed it against his ribs. Marcus noticed but did not reach for it. "You know that name?" he asked. "It was my grandma's." "Naomi Bennett?" Eli's eyes dropped. "Maybe. You don't have to show me anything. People took her things before." The words were quiet and practiced, as though the boy had been warned often enough to stop expecting adults to ask permission. Marcus closed the magnified view. He did not tell Eli that the name might be important. He did not ask what was inside the bag. "Nothing leaves your hands unless you decide," he said. His email chimed from the counter. A letter had arrived from Adrian Vale's attorney, written in measured language about privacy, intellectual property, and unauthorized photography. It demanded immediate deletion of the image because it had allegedly been taken inside a restricted conservation access area. Marcus read that sentence again. Adrian had told the people in the gallery that he never entered the conservation space before 4 o'clock. The raw metadata showed the photograph had been taken at 3 hours 14 minutes and 26 seconds. In the reflection behind Adrian, a brass wall clock showed almost the same time. Marcus enlarged the clock face and placed the attorney's letter beside the monitor. "What time did Mr. Vale say he went behind the display?" he asked. Eli frowned, trying to remember. Maya looked up from her math page. "He told the reporter after 4, she said. "I heard because she asked if he missed the donor picture." Marcus did not praise her for solving anything. He simply wrote the statement in his notes and marked it as a child's recollection requiring confirmation. Then he called the public number printed on Harbolite's event program and asked for the official schedule. A receptionist said Adrian's conservation tour had begun at 4:05. Her voice remained courteous until Marcus asked one simple question. "Then why is his attorney saying my camera photographed him in that restricted area at 3:14? The line went quiet. The receptionist said she would have someone return his call, then ended the conversation. Adrian's explanation could still be innocent. The camera clock might have been wrong. The wireless request might have been automatic. The pale label might have belonged to anyone named Naomi. Marcus wrote each possibility in a second column titled Not Yet Proven. But when North Harbor Digital Forensics sent its preliminary intake report, one line made him lean closer to the screen. The raw structure appeared original, while the failed wireless access request carried a network identifier registered to Harbolight's internal conservation system. Someone inside the building had tried to reach Eli's photograph before Marcus ever removed the memory card. The network identifier on North Harbor Digital Forensics report matched Harbolight's internal conservation system. Marcus read the line twice, then placed the printed page beneath the work lamp beside the sealed memory card. The shop had gone quiet enough for him to hear the refrigerator click off in the back room. "Does that mean they tried to erase it?" Eli asked. "It means something inside their system tried to reach the camera," Marcus said. "Not why, not who." His answer disappointed the boy, but Marcus refused to turn suspicion into certainty just because certainty would feel better. He folded the report, slid it into a manila envelope, and wrote the date and time across the flap. At 9 the next morning, Serena Cole arrived wearing a cream wool coat and carrying 2 coffees in a cardboard tray. A younger man in a navy suit followed her with a leather portfolio tucked beneath one arm. Serena paused inside the door, allowing her eyes to move over the flickering fluorescent light, the scarred counter, and the handwritten sign offering free estimates. The smile she gave Marcus looked warm enough to belong in a donor newsletter. "I thought we could resolve this quietly," she said. "Quietly for whom?" "For everyone." The refrigerator motor started again behind the curtain. Maya sat at the back table coloring a school map, while Eli waited in the small office with the door open, close enough to hear Marcus but out of view from the front window. Marcus had asked his guardian for permission before allowing him to return to the shop. He had also told Eli he did not need to speak to Serena. Serena placed 1 coffee on the counter. Marcus did not touch it. The man beside her introduced himself as Daniel Price from Harbolight's Foundation office and opened the portfolio. Inside lay a 3-year repair contract, a check large enough to cover 6 months of rent, and a new youth program form bearing Eli's name. "Harbolight values your work," Daniel said. Yesterday became emotionally charged. A child's entry was suspended before he took the picture. Serena's fingers rested on the coffee lid. "The timestamp issue is being reviewed." Marcus watched her thumb press once against the plastic rim. "Then review it." Daniel slid the contract closer. "This would restore your access immediately. It also includes a public statement clarifying that no misconduct occurred on your part." "What does Eli have to sign?" "A standard participation update." Marcus pulled the youth form toward him. He read the first page, then the second. Serena began describing scholarship opportunities in a low, reassuring voice. Marcus kept reading. On the last page, beneath the harmless heading Community Storytelling Consent, Harbolight claimed the permanent right to reproduce, modify, sublicense, sell, and create derivative works from any image made by a participating child, including images produced on privately owned equipment. The language was dense, printed in smaller type than the rest. Marcus took a red pencil from the jar beside his tools and drew a line beneath the paragraph. "This isn't permission to display a student's work," he said. "It transfers control of it." Daniel adjusted his glasses. "It allows the foundation to promote the program." "Then why does it say sell?" Serena's hand stopped moving. The air conditioner above the front window rattled, then settled into a steady hum. From the back room came the soft scrape of Maya turning a page. Daniel closed one hand over the portfolio as if the papers had shifted out of place. "Mr. Reed, no one is trying to take advantage of a child." Marcus rotated the form so the paragraph faced them. "Then remove the paragraph. These agreements are drafted by counsel. Counsel didn't bring it into my shop." Serena exhaled slowly. Her smile remained, but the warmth had left it. "The form protects Harbolight from misunderstandings. This situation has already created enough of those." "You mean the photograph?" "I mean the way people might interpret an incomplete image." Marcus glanced toward the small black camera mounted above his register. Before Serena arrived, he had checked that it was recording audio and video. He had not hidden it. A red status light glowed plainly above the lens. "What image?" he asked. Serena looked at him as though the question were beneath the conversation. "The one showing Mr. Vale near the frame." "Near which part of the frame?" Daniel turned slightly toward her. Serena answered too quickly. "The rear label." A chair leg scraped once in the office, then stopped. Even the air conditioner seemed louder. Marcus had never told Serena that the pale rectangle appeared behind the artwork. He had never shown her the enlarged file. He had only asked Harbolite why Adrian's attorney placed him in the restricted area at 314. Marcus let the silence remain. Serena's fingertips slowly flattened against the contract. "You saw the label?" he asked. "I am familiar with the installation. You said the picture was technically unreliable." "It is. But reliable enough for you to know what's behind the frame." Daniel lowered his eyes to the papers. He did not challenge Serena, but his expression changed from confidence to calculation. He reached into his jacket, took out his phone, and typed a short message with the screen angled away from her. Serena lifted the coffee cup but did not drink. "The original name behind the frame was never meant for public display," she said. The words entered the room gently and landed like metal. Marcus did not move toward her. He did not accuse her of fraud or demand a confession. He simply turned the red pencil in his fingers. "What original name?" Serena blinked once. "I'm speaking generally." "No, you weren't." Daniel placed his phone face down on the portfolio. "Serena, perhaps we should pause." "There is nothing to pause." Her voice remained controlled, but the plastic coffee lid gave a small pop beneath her grip. A drop of coffee ran over her knuckle. She wiped it away with a napkin and turned back to Marcus. "Give us the memory card and the camera. We will have both examined through the proper process. Eli's photograph can return to the wall. Your contract can be restored. No one needs to leave this damaged." Marcus looked at the check. It would keep the lights on. It would replace the tires on his truck, cover Maya's dental bill, and leave enough to pay the property tax he had been avoiding. In unopened envelopes. He imagined the relief of signing his name. Then he looked at the consent form beside it. "You're not offering to help the boy," he said. "You're offering to own what he saw." Serena's eyes hardened for the first time. "Be careful, Mr. Reed. Protecting evidence and withholding property are not the same thing. The camera is mine. The card is mine. The picture belongs to Eli unless a court says otherwise. Harbolite's policy says differently. Your policy was printed before he had a lawyer, before his guardian read it, and before he understood what permanent meant." Marcus pushed the contract, the check, and the form back across the counter. "I won't sign it." Daniel kept his hand on the portfolio but did not close it. "May I see the original report from the lab?" he asked. Serena turned toward him. "Daniel, if the network access came from our conservation system, the Foundation needs to preserve its logs. This is an internal matter. That is why the logs should be preserved." His tone was not loyal to Marcus. It was loyal to risk. Still, it was the first action anyone connected to Harbolite had taken that did not begin with silencing Eli. Daniel sent another message and told someone to place an immediate retention hold on the Conservation Network records. Serena stared at him for a long second, then gathered the papers. "You are making this larger than it needs to be," she told Marcus. "No," he said. "I'm refusing to make the boy smaller." After they left, the bell above the door gave its tired metallic rattle and settled. Marcus waited until Serena's sedan pulled away before turning off the security recording and saving 2 copies. Eli stepped from the office holding the old cloth bag against his chest. Some of the fear had left his face, though not all of it. "You said no to all that money," he said. "I said no to the last page." Marcus began sealing the recording drive in a labeled envelope. Eli watched him write the date, then looked toward the cracked camera beneath the work lamp. "My grandma used to say papers could steal things without making any noise." Marcus paused. Eli loosened the drawstring of the cloth bag and reached inside. He removed a small brass film canister, darkened with age, and placed it carefully beside Danielle's camera. 2 letters and 1 number had been scratched into its lid by hand. NB7. "She told me never to let Mr. Vale see this," Eli whispered. Marcus looked from the initials on the canister to the half-visible name in the recovered photograph, and understood that the first real proof had not ended the mystery. It had opened a door into something that began long before Eli was born. The brass film canister marked NB7 sat beneath the work lamp between Danielle's cracked camera and the recording envelope from Serena's visit. Marcus did not reach for it. "Is your guardian okay with me opening this?" he asked. Eli nodded and held out a phone already connected to his aunt, who gave permission but asked Marcus to photograph every item before moving it. He did exactly that. He photographed the closed canister, the worn cloth bag, the knots in its drawstring, and Eli's hands resting beside it. Then he put on clean cotton gloves and lifted the lid. Inside was no roll of film. There was a contact sheet folded into quarters, a yellow darkroom envelope, and a narrow strip of paper bearing the name Naomi Bennett in faded blue ink. The shop's printer clicked once in the silence and stopped. Marcus unfolded the contact sheet slowly beneath a sheet of clear archival plastic. 36 tiny black and white frames appeared in 6 rows, each marked in grease pencil. Frame 18 showed the same composition as Adrian Vale's celebrated $50 million photograph. The figures stood in the same positions. The light struck the same window. Even the blur of a passing bus appeared at the same edge of the image. Eli leaned closer but kept his hands beneath the table. "That's his picture," he whispered. Marcus studied the frames before and after it. "It's part of a sequence." Frame 17 showed the subject entering the room. Frame 18 captured the famous moment. Frame 19 showed the subject turning away. That continuity mattered more than resemblance. A copied image could imitate one frame. It could not easily invent the moments on both sides of it. Marcus switched on his film scanner and examined the sheet at higher magnification. Near the lower edge of frame 18 was a crescent-shaped scratch. The same scratch continued faintly into frame 19. He brought up a high-resolution catalog image of Adrian's print and placed it beside the scan. The crescent sat in exactly the same place. Eli's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Marcus did not say they had one. "This suggests the print came from the same negative sequence," he said. "It does not yet prove who owned the rights. My grandma took it. I believe that may be true." "Maybe." Hurt flashed across the boy's face. Marcus removed his glasses and cleaned them with Danielle's flowered cloth. "Believing you and proving something to people who don't want it proven are 2 different jobs." Eli looked down at the contact sheet. "People always said she just helped him." The words carried no anger, only an old embarrassment that had settled into him before he was old enough to question it. He explained that Naomi had once kept boxes of photographs in her apartment. After she became ill, men from the foundation came to organize the archive. Some boxes returned. Others did not. Adrian's name began appearing in magazines beside photographs Eli remembered seeing on his grandmother's walls. When Naomi complained, relatives were told she was confused from medication and grief. By the time Eli was old enough to understand, she had stopped calling herself a photographer. Marcus felt something tighten behind his ribs. He imagined a woman watching her life return to her with someone else's name printed beneath it. His phone buzzed against the workbench. North Harbor Digital Forensics had completed its integrity review. The file raw was original, its internal structure consistent with Eli's camera, and there was no evidence of editing after capture. The failed wireless request had originated from an access point assigned to Harbourlight's conservation network. The report did not identify a person, but it eliminated the simplest accusation against Marcus. The image had not been manufactured in his shop. He printed 2 copies, sealed one, and sent the other to Daniel Price at the Foundation office with a written request that the network logs remain preserved. Daniel replied 12 minutes later. The logs had already been placed on hold. He also attached an invoice he had found in Harbourlight's conservation records. Malcolm Voss's holding company had paid for replacement of obsolete attribution label 3 days before the exhibition. Marcus read the line twice. The public catalog claimed the frame had remained sealed and untouched for 40 years. Eli watched his face. What is it? Another contradiction. Marcus placed the invoice beside the enlarged reflection of Adrian's hand and the blue tape on his cuff. The paper, the image, and the tape did not prove the entire theft, but they now formed a pattern. Someone had opened the frame, changed its label, and then tried to reach Eli's camera after it recorded the act. Marcus called a paper conservator recommended by the digital lab. He did not tell her whose reputation was involved. He described the contact sheet, the envelope, the ink, and the storage condition. By late afternoon, she stood in the shop beneath the same flickering fluorescent tube, examining the materials through a magnifying lens. She confirmed the paper stock and processing marks were consistent with the late 1960s. The handwriting appeared naturally aged, not recently distressed. She also found the same batch code on the envelope as one used by a Baltimore community darkroom that had closed in 1972. This is not a final attribution, she warned. It means these materials belong to the period they claim to belong to. Marcus nodded. That's all I need you to say. A city library archivist joined by video call and searched an old card catalog that had never been fully digitized. After several minutes of drawers sliding and index cards tapping against wood, she held one card up to the camera. The entry listed Naomi Bennett as the depositor of a photographic series titled Roll 7. Adrian Vale's name appeared beneath hers as studio assistant. Eli stared at the screen. The room became so still that the fluorescent buzz seemed to press against the walls. She wasn't his assistant, he said. No. Marcus answered. According to this, he was hers. The truth did not make Eli smile. His eyes filled, but he turned away before the tears fell. I believed them, he said. I thought maybe she was remembering it wrong. Marcus did not tell him not to cry. He moved the contact sheet away from the edge of the table, poured Eli a glass of water, and remained beside him without touching him until the boy chose to look back. What they taught you to believe is not something you did to her, Marcus said. But we can decide what we do now. A reporter left 2 messages asking whether Marcus possessed proof against Adrian. Publishing the contact sheet that night could have cleared Marcus's name and destroyed Harbolite's control of the story. It could also have exposed Eli's family, invited challenges to the originals, and given Adrian time to shape a defense around evidence he had not yet seen. Marcus deleted neither message, but he returned neither call. He photographed the contact sheet again, placed the originals in acid-free sleeves, recorded the chain of custody, and returned the cloth bag to Eli's guardian. Revenge would have been faster. Protection required patience. Before closing, Daniel sent one more file. A scanned transfer agreement Malcolm's company claimed Naomi had signed during her illness. It granted permanent ownership of her archive to the foundation. At first glance, it appeared complete. Then Marcus compared Naomi's signature on the agreement with the handwriting on the darkroom envelope and the library deposit card. On every genuine example, the capital B in Bennett leaned left and closed in a narrow loop. On the transfer form, the B leaned sharply right, drawn with 2 wide, careful curves like someone copying a shape they did not naturally write. The agreement might still have an innocent explanation. Illness could change a hand. Age could weaken it. Marcus added the discrepancy to the not yet proven column and requested the original document, its witness record, and any medical or notary files tied to the signing. Daniel called almost immediately. His voice was lower than before. Harbolite's board intended to proceed with the Grand Atrium presentation and the $50 million transaction the next evening. Serena had already prepared a statement accusing Marcus of manipulating a child and fabricating digital evidence. Marcus looked at the contact sheet, the conservation invoice, the laboratory report, and Naomi's mismatched signature spread beneath the work lamp. The truth was now too large to bury inside his little shop, and by tomorrow night, the people who had controlled it for decades would force him to defend it in the same building where they had erased Eli's name. By 6:30 the next evening, the Grand Atrium at Harbolite Community Arts Center had been transformed into a room designed to make doubt feel impolite. White lights washed the marble floor. A string quartet played beneath the balcony. Donors in dark suits stood beside museum trustees, insurance representatives, reporters, and collectors waiting for the $50 million presentation to begin. At the far end of the room, Adrian Vale's famous photograph hung behind glass beneath a black silk drape. Marcus entered through the side doors carrying one worn document case and wearing the same charcoal work shirt he used in his shop. His brown canvas apron was gone, but the wedding ring still rested on its cord against his chest. Eli walked several steps behind him with his aunt, the old cloth bag held close beneath his coat. Maya stayed home with a neighbor Marcus trusted. This was not a room for a 10-year-old to carry adult fear. Heads turned as Marcus crossed the atrium. Some guests recognized him from the statement Serena had released that afternoon. Others recognized only the scuffed work boots beneath his clean trousers and the repairman's hands holding a case that looked too ordinary for the room. Near the stage, Daniel Price stood beside two attorneys from Harbolite's insurance carrier. He gave Marcus a small nod, not of support, but of acknowledgement that the evidence had arrived. Serena stepped to the microphone before Marcus reached the reserved area. "Tonight should have been a celebration," she began. Her voice was steady, touched with sadness rather than anger. "Unfortunately, Harbolite has been forced to address allegations created by an outside vendor who removed digital material from our facility and involved a vulnerable child in a private financial dispute." A murmur moved through the atrium. Adrian stood several feet behind her with his hands folded. His face composed into the wounded calm of a man disappointed by someone beneath him. Malcolm Voss remained near the auction table, speaking quietly to the event director and glancing at the large countdown clock projected above the stage. "Mr. Reed was trusted to repair equipment," Serena continued. "Instead, he withheld a memory card, altered the context of an innocent photograph, and attempted to damage the reputation of an artist who has spent decades serving this community." The screen behind her lit up. Security footage showed Marcus leaving Harbolite with Eli's memory card in his apron. The clip had no sound. It began after Adrian reached for the camera and ended before Serena ordered staff to delete images. To the room, it looked simple. A contractor taking disputed property and walking away. Several people shifted their attention toward Marcus. A trustee in the front row slowly removed her glasses. Adrian stepped forward when Serena handed him the microphone. "I have known many young artists who struggle to separate disappointment from wrongdoing," he said. "The boy's photograph was not rejected because of who he is. It was rejected because standards matter. Mr. Reed appears to have turned that disappointment into something cruel." He paused and looked toward Eli, careful to make the concern visible. "I do not blame the child." Eli moved closer to his aunt. Marcus felt the boy's fear without turning around. "The image Mr. Reed has circulated shows me performing routine conservation work," Adrian continued. "A label had loosened. I adjusted it. There is no conspiracy, no theft, and no mystery." The explanation moved easily through the room because it was reasonable enough to accept. A loose label, a repairman seeking money, a child caught in the middle. For several seconds, it appeared the evening had already chosen its truth. Malcolm leaned toward the event director. "Proceed with the presentation," he said, loud enough for nearby reporters to hear. "We should not reward disruption." The countdown clock resumed at 15 minutes. That was the first moment the room began slipping away from Marcus. Serena's account fit the edited video. Adrian had offered an innocent reason for touching the frame. The contact sheet and old handwriting remained inside Marcus's case, unseen and easy to dismiss as family memorabilia. Marcus did not reach for the microphone. He walked instead to the table where the insurance attorneys stood and placed the sealed digital forensics report before them. "Before the transaction proceeds," he said, "check the timestamps." Serena's smile tightened. "This is not the time for a technical performance. It's the time printed on your camera." One attorney opened the report. The other requested the security video source file from Harbolite's system. Serena said the clip on screen was the relevant portion. Daniel quietly handed the attorney a service log. "The export request removed 11 minutes, he said. Serena turned toward him. That was done to protect the child. The request says remove physical dispute near youth station. The attorney read the line aloud. A chair stopped scraping across the marble. The quartet had finished its piece, leaving the air conditioning system suddenly audible above the crowd. Marcus looked at the timecode displayed on the edited clip. Why does it jump from 3:13 to 3:24? He asked. Serena's fingers closed around the microphone. Because nothing relevant occurred during that interval. The photograph was taken at 3:14. Several faces turned toward the screen. Daniel asked the technician to load the archived file preserved under the retention hold. Serena stepped toward the control desk. This material involves minors and cannot be displayed without review. Then don't display Eli, Marcus said. Display the clock. The attorney instructed the technician to continue. The uncut footage appeared in a small preview window, not yet projected to the full room. It showed Eli raising the cracked camera. It showed Adrian crossing the gallery before anyone accused Marcus of misconduct. It showed Serena arriving as Marcus removed the card to keep Adrian from taking it. Adrian's explanation did not collapse, but it changed shape. He had not merely adjusted a label and walked away. He had seen the camera screen and moved directly toward the child. Serena recovered quickly. Mr. Vale was concerned that restricted conservation procedures had been photographed without authorization. Marcus opened his document case and removed the attorney's letter from Part 4. He set it beside the digital forensics report. At what time did Mr. Vale enter the conservation area? The event director consulted the official schedule. The guided access began at 4:05. Marcus pointed to the raw metadata verified by North Harbor Digital Forensics. The photograph was taken at 3 hours 14 minutes and 26 seconds. Adrian spoke before Serena could answer. Camera clocks are often wrong. It was plausible. A cracked camera could easily hold the wrong time. For a second time, the room seemed ready to return to him. Marcus nodded. That's why I didn't rely on the camera clock. He asked the technician to enlarge the brass wall clock reflected in the glass behind Adrian. His hands showed almost exactly 3:14. The attorney slowly lowered the schedule. One reporter stopped typing and looked up. Adrian's polished expression remained in place, but a line of moisture had appeared near his temple. Coincidence, Malcolm said. The man is building a story from reflections. Marcus turned toward him. Then the conservation invoice should clear it up. Malcolm's hand paused above the auction papers. Changing that label was routine. The words reached the microphone on the table beside him. No invoice had yet been shown. No one had said the payment involved a label. The silence that followed was brief, but different from the polite pauses before it. Malcolm realized what he had revealed and covered it with irritation. Every collection requires maintenance. That proves nothing. Not by itself, Marcus said. He removed the invoice showing Malcolm's holding company had paid to replace an obsolete attribution label 3 days before the event. Then he placed a catalog page beside it, highlighting the claim that the frame had remained sealed for 40 years. The insurance attorney asked for both originals. Malcolm told the event director the documents were being misrepresented. Serena insisted the matter should move to a private board review. Adrian said the old label had been damaged and historically inaccurate. Each explanation could still survive alone. Together, they had begun to press against one another. Eli stood safely behind his aunt, saying nothing. When Marcus glanced back, the boy opened the cloth bag just enough to show the brass edge of the NB7 canister. It was not a signal to expose it. It was a reminder that the next choice belonged to them. Marcus turned to the insurance attorney. I'm not here to punish anyone in front of a crowd, he said. I'm here because the sale makes the story permanent. The attorney looked toward the countdown clock, now below 5 minutes, then at the sealed evidence case. You have 90 seconds, she said. After that, the carrier decides whether to freeze the transaction. The main screen went black. Adrian stepped toward the control table. Serena called for legal counsel. Malcolm ordered the auctioneer to begin. Marcus placed Danielle's cracked camera beneath the document lens while the technician loaded the untouched RAW file, the contact sheet, the recording from Serena's visit, and the preserved security footage into a single presentation queue. The timer appeared in the upper corner of the screen and began counting down from 90 as the first image prepared to open. The untouched RAW file opened across the Grand Atrium's main screen with 87 seconds remaining. At first, the photograph looked almost ordinary. Polished glass, white gallery light, Adrian Vale's famous print hanging beneath its black presentation drape, and the cracked reflection of a shy boy holding an old camera no one had wanted. Marcus stood beside the document table with one hand resting near Danielle's camera, not touching the controls, not looking at Adrian. "Verify the file before you look at the story," he said. The digital forensics specialist at the insurance table read the serial number aloud. It matched the camera beneath the lens. She read the hash value from her sealed report. It matched the file on screen. No edits. No inserted layers. No alteration after capture. The timer reached 79 seconds. Serena lifted the microphone. "Integrity does not establish interpretation." "Correct," Marcus said. "So look at the time." The metadata appeared beside the image. 3:14 and 26 seconds p.m. Then the technician enlarged the brass wall clock reflected in the glass behind Adrian. His minute hand sat just past 14. A murmur rose and died almost immediately. Adrian swallowed and kept his shoulders square. The schedule was approximate. Marcus did not answer. The full security footage began playing in silence beneath the photograph. Eli raised the cracked camera. Adrian stood behind the featured frame. The shutter flashed. Adrian turned, crossed the gallery, and reached directly for the device before anyone had accused Marcus of anything. The section missing from Serena's public clip filled the screen 1 second at a time. Serena's hand moved toward the camera. Malcolm signaled security. Marcus removed the memory card and stepped between Adrian and the boy. The insurance attorney looked at Serena. Why was this interval removed? To protect a minor. The child's face could have been blurred. Serena's lips parted, but Daniel Price placed the service log on the table before she could answer. The export request was projected beside the footage. Remove physical dispute near youth station. The room's air conditioning vents clicked on overhead. The sound seemed suddenly enormous. 63 seconds remained. Marcus nodded toward the technician. The photograph expanded again, this time into the fractured reflection in the frame glass. Pixels sharpened under the verified raw data. Adrian's hand appeared behind the artwork, fingers pinching a pale paper label. A strip of blue conservation tape clung to his cuff. Malcolm stood half-turned beside him, holding a cream-colored provenance sheet that had not yet been signed. The label bent beneath Adrian's thumb. The technician increased the contrast. Faded letters came into view across the screen. Naomi Bennett, Roll 7, 1968. No one spoke. Adrian stared at the name. Behind him as though it had entered the room without permission. "Routine relabeling," Malcolm said, but his voice had gone dry. Marcus placed the conservation invoice beneath the document camera. Malcolm's holding company had paid to replace an obsolete attribution label 3 days before the event. Beside it appeared the catalog statement claiming the frame had remained sealed for 40 years. "The invoice has already been explained," Serena said. "Then explain the recording," Marcus replied. He pressed one key. Serena's voice filled the atrium from the shop's security file, calm and unmistakable. The original name behind the frame was never meant for public display. The recording continued through her offer of money, the demand for the camera, and the contract that would have given Harbolite permanent control over Eli's image. Serena's fingers loosened around the microphone. The edge of her folder slipped against the podium and fell open across the floor. Papers slid over the marble with a sound like dry leaves. 42 seconds remained. The contact sheet appeared next. 36 frames from Roll 7 filled the screen. Frame 17 showed the subject entering the room. Frame 18 matched the $50 million photograph. Frame 19 showed the subject turning away. The crescent-shaped scratch along the lower edge continued across the sequence. The conservator's report appeared beside it, followed by the city library card naming Naomi Bennett as depositor and Adrian Vale as studio assistant. Adrian's breathing became visible beneath his collar. "Naomi worked for me," he said. "She assigned the archive to the foundation." Marcus looked toward the insurance attorney. "Show the transfer document." The scanned agreement appeared, bearing Naomi's name and a signature that leaned sharply to the right. Beside it, the technician placed Naomi's handwriting from the darkroom envelope and library deposit card. In every verified example, the capital B leaned left and closed into a narrow loop. On the transfer form, it opened wide in two careful curves. "Handwriting varies under illness," Adrian said quickly, "especially after the hospital stay." The attorney looked up. "What hospital stay?" Adrian froze. The room did not react at once. That made the moment heavier. No public catalog mentioned a hospital. No foundation statement acknowledged Naomi's illness. The medical and notary records tied to the transfer had not yet been produced. Adrian had reached for an explanation only someone close to the signing circumstances would know. Malcolm's auction pen rolled from his fingers, struck the table edge, and fell to the marble. The tiny click carried farther than the quartet had. 28 seconds remained. The insurance attorney raised one hand. "Freeze the transaction." The countdown stopped. The auctioneer stepped away from the podium. A second attorney instructed Harbolite staff to preserve the artwork, the frame, the original label materials, the network logs, the security files, the transfer agreement, and all financial records connected to Malcolm's holding company. Daniel ordered the conservation room sealed under dual access. No applause followed. No one cheered. The system moved with measured voices, written instructions, and people suddenly careful about where they placed their hands. Marcus lifted Danielle's cracked camera and set it beneath the document lens. The red stitching along the strap glowed against the dark casing. He peeled back the old battery tape just enough for the words beneath it to appear. "Keep looking." Then he turned the live camera back toward Eli's photograph. "This camera did not decide who was guilty," Marcus said. "It only refused to forget what stood in front of it." The main screen returned to Naomi's name. Eli remained beside his aunt until Marcus looked at him and gave a small nod that meant he could stay where he was. The boy looked at the reporters, the trustees, the donors, and the white glare of the stage lights. Then he took one step forward, holding the brass canister in both hands. His aunt stayed beside him. Marcus moved close enough to block the nearest camera without blocking Eli's path back. Eli placed NB7 beside Danielle's camera. His fingers trembled against the brass lid. "That was my grandmother's name," he said. The atrium went completely silent. Serena's mouth opened, then closed. Malcolm looked down at the scattered papers around his shoes. Adrian turned toward the screen, where Naomi Bennett's name now stood taller than he did. A phone vibrated somewhere near the front row and no one reached to answer it. The projector fan whispered. A page from Serena's fallen folder shifted in the conditioned air. Eli let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for years. Marcus did not look at the three people losing control of the room. He looked only at the boy. "You didn't remove an old label," he said quietly. "You removed a woman from her own life." Reporters began raising their cameras. Flashes gathered at the edge of Eli's vision. Before the first one fired, Marcus stepped in front of him and lifted his palm. "Turn them off," he said. The insurance attorney backed him immediately. "No images of the minor without guardian consent." Security redirected the press. Eli's aunt drew him close, and the boy wrapped both hands around the canister again. The truth had been recognized. The sale had stopped. Naomi's name was no longer hidden behind the frame. But as Marcus stood between Eli and a room suddenly eager to praise the child it had ignored, he understood that exposing the lie was only the first duty. The harder question was what he would do with the attention, influence, and power that had finally turned toward him. The grand atrium emptied without the celebration Harbolite had planned. Donors left in small, quiet groups. Reporters lowered their cameras under the insurance attorney's order, and security sealed the conservation room with 2 signatures recorded on every entry. Adrian Vale was escorted to a private office while his access credentials were suspended. Serena Cole surrendered her foundation badge and the event files she had carried onto the stage. Malcolm Voss watched an attorney place the auction documents into an evidence case. His fallen pen still lying beneath the table where no one bothered to retrieve it. Marcus remained beside Eli until the last camera light disappeared. He did not answer questions about lawsuits, rewards, or what punishment he wanted. He returned Danielle's cracked camera to its padded case, checked that the brass canister marked NB7 was safely back in Eli's hands, and walked the boy and his aunt through a service exit where no reporters were waiting. Is Grandma's name really going back? Eli asked beneath the yellow light over the loading dock. Marcus looked at the canister held against the boy's coat. They have to verify everything properly.
Elias Polder slowered.
That means maybe. It means no one gets to erase her again while they check. The answer was not dramatic, but it was one Marcus could promise. Over the following weeks, justice arrived through certified letters, locked archives, audit meetings, and long hours spent beneath office lights. Harbolite's insurer froze the $50 million transaction. A neutral conservator removed the disputed photograph from public display and placed it in secured storage. Independent specialists examined the original frame, the replaced label, the Roll 7 contact sheet, the transfer agreement, and Naomi Bennett's verified handwriting. The crescent-shaped scratch matched. The paper stock matched. The library deposit record held. The signature on the transfer document showed signs of imitation and was referred for further legal review. Adrian was suspended from the foundation and from exhibitions connected to the disputed archive. Serena was dismissed after the board confirmed that she had authorized the altered security export and attempted to acquire Eli's image rights through a misleading consent form. Malcolm's holding companies were placed under financial audit, and 6 other works attributed to Adrian entered formal provenance review. No one was sentenced overnight. No courtroom delivered a perfect speech. The system moved slowly, but this time it moved with the evidence preserved. Harbolite corrected Eli's file first. The red integrity warning disappeared from his student record. His photograph was resubmitted to a new judging panel under a number instead of his name, with no mention of Adrian, Naomi, or the public confrontation. It earned a youth scholarship on its own merits. When Daniel Price called Marcus with the result, Marcus asked him to tell Eli's aunt before issuing any announcement. Let him hear good news from someone he trusts, he said. Eli chose not to attend the press conference announcing Naomi Bennett's restored attribution. Instead, he spent that afternoon at Marcus's shop, photographing light falling through the laundromat window next door. Adults handled the lawyers, reporters, and archives. Eli was allowed to be 11. Naomi's name returned to the gallery wall months later after the independent review confirmed her authorship of Roll 7 and connected works. The new label did not describe her as Adrian's assistant or as a forgotten woman discovered by chance. It named her as a Baltimore photographer, documented her archive, and explained how her authorship had been displaced. Eli stood before it with his aunt and touched 2 fingers to the brass canister in his pocket. No one asked him to speak. No one aimed a camera at his face. Marcus watched from several steps away, giving the boy room to meet his grandmother without an audience demanding tears. Harbolite offered Marcus a large settlement and a ceremonial title intended to show the public that the institution had changed. He accepted compensation for the canceled work, legal expenses, and damage to his business, but refused the honorary position. A chair with my name on it won't protect the next kid, he told the board. He agreed to serve on a new youth rights committee only after 3 conditions were written into policy. Students and families would retain ownership of their work, no child's image could be sold or promoted without clear consent, and every dispute involving a minor would require an independent advocate. The board also required 2 signatures for attribution changes, preserved full security footage during disputes, and opened a review process for families whose archives might have been mislabeled. Daniel did not praise Marcus as a hero. He shook his hand and said, "You kept the evidence clean when anger would have been easier." That respect meant more to Marcus than the title they had offered. The settlement repaired the truck, cleared the shop's overdue bills, and replaced the flickering fluorescent fixture above the workbench. But Marcus kept the scarred counter, the faded window lettering, and Danielle's flowered lens cloth. He placed the words "Keep Looking" beneath a small piece of glass where they could be seen without peeling back the battery tape. The cracked camera no longer remained locked in a drawer. It sat on the center shelf, not as an object too painful to touch, but as a tool that had survived long enough to protect someone. The Naomi Bennett, Danielle Reed Youth Lens Lab opened in the renovated room beside Marcus's shop the following spring. Children could borrow cameras without proving their poverty in front of donors. Families received simple explanations of copyright. Broken equipment was repaired free at a long wooden table where Marcus taught students how to clean lenses, label files, and keep their names attached to what they created. Eli used the red-stitched camera for another year. He still spoke softly, but he no longer lowered it whenever someone important entered the room. On opening day, Maya stood near the doorway holding a smaller camera in both hands. She had watched her father photograph nothing since her mother died. "Dad," she said, "can I take one?" Marcus's first instinct was to step aside. His fingers touched the wedding ring hanging against his chest, then moved to the old camera strap resting beside Eli. He looked at Maya, at Eli, and at the two women's names painted quietly on the wall behind them. "Okay," he said. Maya lifted the camera. Eli moved beside Marcus without being asked. The shutter clicked once. No crowd reacted. No one clapped. For a few seconds, the room remained still while the new image appeared on the screen. Marcus between two children, his work-worn hands visible, his wedding ring catching a small line of afternoon light, Naomi Bennett and Danielle Reed written clearly behind them. A reporter near the door waited until Marcus noticed her, then asked how he wanted people to remember his part in the story. Marcus looked across the room at children writing their own names on white identification cards before sliding them into their cameras. "They don't have to remember mine," he said. "Just let the children keep theirs."